My name is Emma Harris. I'm 30 years old. And on the day I graduated from college, there were three empty chairs in the crowd where my family should have been. No text, no phone call, just silence. It wasn't just their absence that hurt, it was the deliberate choice they made not to show up. As I stood there, holding my degree, reciting my accomplishment in front of a crowd, I realized something devastating. I wasn't their priority, not then and not ever. I had achieved something they couldn't be bothered to witness. It wasn't just my degree that made me proud that day. It was the fact that I had done it without them. They weren't there when I needed them, and now their silence was louder than any applause. I thought I'd grown used to it, the silence, the neglect. But as the years went by and my success continued to build, so did the emptiness. I kept pushing forward, carving a path for myself, not for their approval, but for my own peace. 2 years later, as I sat alone at my desk in my office, scrolling through emails, I saw an unfamiliar number on the screen. It was my stepmother. Emma, we need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow. The words hit me like a cold wave. I hadn't heard from them in years. No one had bothered to check on me. But now they were calling, and I couldn't help but wonder, why now? I agreed to meet, but this time I wasn't going as the daughter they had abandoned. I was going as a woman who had built her life on her own. If you enjoyed Emma's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you never miss out on the next chapter.
It had been 5 years since I last set foot in that house. 5 years since I had seen my father and my stepmother, both of whom had chosen to turn their backs on me. They had spent their lives celebrating my brother, Lucas. Always Lucas. He was the one who received the praise, the one who got every bit of attention, and the one whose successes were shared with the world. I was just the background noise, the one who was supposed to accept their indifference. Even after graduating with honors, I wasn't invited to the family dinner. When I got accepted into law school, it was Lucas's basketball game that came first, not my achievements. I had learned to accept that I was nothing more than a shadow in my own family. Lucas, my half-brother, the one they favored, was always the one who mattered. I was always just good enough, but never extraordinary in their eyes. So I stopped seeking their validation. I stopped caring if they ever showed up for me. I learned to build my life alone, without them. I graduated from law school, started my own business, and found success on my own terms. But that success didn't come with the cheers I'd imagined. It didn't come with the praise I'd longed for. I built my career, my wealth, and my independence, but my parents were still out of the picture. Until now. The phone call from my stepmother, after all this time, didn't sit right with me. I could feel the manipulation behind her words. There was no warmth in her voice, only urgency. "We need your help," she said, but I already knew what she meant. They had never cared for me, not when I needed them, and now that I had built a life for myself, they wanted something from me. My mind raced as I thought of all the moments I had spent alone, working hard to prove my worth to them, only to be met with indifference. But I agreed. I agreed to meet them. I told myself it was for closure. I told myself I didn't need their approval anymore. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were only coming to me because I had something they wanted. And that something wasn't love, it was money, success. The very things they had ignored me for, the things they had overlooked when I was struggling. I drove to their house the next day, feeling the weight of the past press down on me. Each mile felt like I was carrying the baggage of my entire life with me. The house seemed smaller now, the porch steps creaking under my feet as I walked up to the door. When my stepmother opened the door, there was no warmth in her greeting, just a shallow smile and a quick glance at the luxury car parked in my driveway. She looked at me as though she had never really seen me, not as her daughter, but as a symbol of what she could now use. Inside, everything was as I remembered, cold, sterile, full of pictures of Lucas. Every room in the house had framed pictures of his accomplishments, his sports trophies, his academic awards, his smiling face. My accomplishments? Not a single one was framed. I could feel the years of neglect, the years of being ignored rushing back. But I had learned to let go of those feelings. I wasn't that girl anymore. I had moved past them. But they hadn't changed. They had just learned to notice me now, because I had something they wanted. My father sat at the head of the table, looking as detached as ever. "Emma," he said, his voice flat. "Lucas is struggling. We need your help. His business has hit a rough patch, and we were hoping you could help us out, just until he gets back on his feet." I sat silently for a moment, staring at the folder he had slid across the table. My name was at the top of the loan paperwork. The one thing they had never done for me was now the thing they expected from me. They wanted me to fix everything. I couldn't help but laugh, although it was more of a bitter chuckle. "You've been planning this for a while, haven't you?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger building up inside. "You think you can just show up now, after all these years, and I'll save you? I've been trying to get your attention for years, but it's never been about love. It was always about convenience, wasn't it?" My stepmother's voice trembled as she spoke again. "We're not demanding, we're just asking." But I knew the truth. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding it because they now saw me as an opportunity. They had always treated me like I was nothing, and now, when I had built something for myself, they wanted a piece of it. Lucas leaned in, with that same smile he always wore, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "You've made it, Emma. Now it's time to help the family." The words stung. Family? Was this what family looked like? I slowly stood up and walked over to the window. I stared at the yard, at the place I had once longed to be seen. Where were you when I graduated? Where were you when I was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet? You weren't here. You chose to ignore me then. And now you're here because I've made something of myself. I closed the folder and set it back on the table. "You'll get your answer tomorrow," I said, and I walked out. This time, I was done. Done chasing their approval, done trying to prove my worth to them. I had earned my place without them, and that was enough. If you're loving the twists in Emma's story, hit that like button, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next.
The next morning, I woke up to the sound of rain tapping gently against my window. It felt like the world outside understood what I was going through, as if even the weather was reflecting my emotions. I had told myself I was done, that I was strong enough to walk away. But as I looked out at the gray sky, a part of me still felt torn. I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my tie and adjusting my jacket sleeve. The decision had already been made. I wasn't going back to that table as the neglected daughter anymore. I was going back as someone who had learned to stand on her own, someone who had learned to succeed without needing their approval. The drive to their house felt different today. It wasn't the familiar route I had taken countless times before. filled with memories of longing, pain, and quiet resentment. No, today it was different. The house seemed smaller, almost as if the years had shrunk it down to size. The steps that had once felt so monumental now seemed insignificant as I walked up the porch. My father answered the door this time. The mask of control was still firmly in place, but I could see the slight twitch in his eye. He knew what was coming. "Emma," he said, stepping aside to let me in. I walked past him, my steps deliberate, calculated. I wasn't going to let them see how deeply this had hurt me. I wasn't going to let them know the years of rejection had taken their toll on me. This was no longer about them. I walked into the dining room, and there they were. My father, sitting at the head of the table as if it were still his kingdom to rule. My stepmother stood by the window, her eyes darting toward me every few seconds, trying to read me, trying to gauge what I would do next. Lucas sat there, the same smug smile on his face, pretending like everything was normal. I didn't sit down. Instead, I placed a thick envelope on the table and slid it toward my father. He looked down, confused. "What's this?" he asked, his voice low. I took a deep breath before responding. Since we're talking about family investments today, I thought I'd share one of mine. I paused, watching the confusion shift to disbelief on his face. It's a scholarship fund I created, a foundation for young women in business, especially those who were overlooked in their families, like I was. $16 million, legally protected, to help girls get the education they deserve. The silence in the room felt like a punch to the gut. My stepmother blinked, her lips trembling. Lucas laughed, brittle and sharp. "You gave $16 million to strangers?" His voice was condescending, mocking. "Not strangers," I said, my voice steady. "Girls like me, who were invisible to their own families." The irony of it all hit me like a wave. Here I was, surrounded by the very people who had dismissed me for years, and now I was showing them that I had built something that mattered. Something that wasn't about money, but about real, tangible change. And yet, all they could focus on was the money they thought I owed them. My stepmother's face softened, but it was laced with desperation. "Emma, you could have helped your brother. You could have helped us." But it wasn't about that. It had never been. They had never helped me. I had done everything on my own. And now, they wanted to reap the benefits of my success just because I was finally in a position to give? "You never showed up for me," I said, standing tall, letting my words hang in the air. "Not when I was graduating, not when I struggled to make ends meet. You didn't care then. And now, you think you deserve my success just because you're my family?" I looked directly at Lucas. "You've always had the world handed to you, but I built mine from the ground up, and I did it without you. And that's the difference." The room was frozen. My father's hand hovered over the paperwork, but he didn't move it. He knew that he had lost. He had expected me to fall into their hands, to be the daughter who would give. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the little girl they had ignored for so many years. "I'll give you an answer tomorrow," I said, my voice calm but firm, and I walked out of the room without looking back. As I stepped outside into the cool morning air, the weight of the past few days seemed to lift. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had walked away from them before, but now I was truly free. I had nothing to prove to them anymore. They had shown their true colors, And now I could finally move on. If you're feeling the emotional impact of Emma's story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you.
The next morning, I woke up early. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast. I stood in front of my window, staring out at the quiet street below. I knew what I had to do. The meeting had been painful, but it had given me the clarity I needed. I didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened the email app. I composed the message quickly, the words flowing effortlessly from my fingertips. Subject: the answer. Dear Dad, after careful consideration, I've made my decision. I will not be helping with the loan. Not because I don't care, but because I've realized that I can't keep giving to people who never gave to me. You were never there for me when I needed you most. Now that I've built something for myself, you want to take from me. I won't allow it. The foundation I've created is the legacy I want to leave behind. Helping young women who were overlooked just like I was. That is where my energy, my money, and my heart will be from now on. I've done it on my own, and I plan to continue doing so. Take care. Emma. I hit send and sat back, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace wash over me. I had made my boundaries clear, and I wasn't looking back. The choice to walk away was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength. I had finally reclaimed my life, my power, and my peace. If you're feeling the emotional impact of Emma's story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Comment below with your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you.